स्वाहा तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us meditate on the glorious effulgence of that Supreme Being who created the universe. May she enlighten our hearts and direct our understanding. Please be seated. Okay, hi everyone. Hope you all had a lovely Easter break. So it feels like a long time ago, but the last time we met, we were looking at the philosophy behind the Raj Yoga system, which is the pathway to making spiritual progress through meditation. And we discussed that it's philosophically very sound, but it's a very, very difficult path, perhaps the most difficult path. So today I just wanted to sort of explore with you the different steps which are involved in this process of meditation. And you're welcome to, in a way, give it a go yourself if you've got spare time at home. So a very sort of fascinating topic. So the Raj Yoga system actually has 8 steps within it. I won't go into depth into exactly what all of those are, but the first 2 steps of Raj Yoga are called Yam and Niyam. And they are actually, before you even considered fit to sit down to meditate, you are supposed to have this sort of moral training, because your mind needs to be in the correct frame in order for you to stand any chance of success at meditation. The first discipline is this idea of being truthful. So basically what you think, what you say, and what you do must all align. So, we think we're honest, we're truthful, but suppose you say to your friend, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. And then tomorrow, for whatever reason, your friend isn't well and you're not able to see them, then you've, without even realizing, you've told a lie. There are many aspects of our life where we say things just out of carelessness and we're not able to fulfill. So we have to be very careful if we choose the path of Raj Yoga to say, I'm going to be truthful to every letter of everything that I say must be truthful. What I think I must say, and what I say I must do. And even for example, in the case of diplomacy, we often sort of tell fibs. Say, for example, there's somebody you really don't want to see and you're trying to avoid them, but you sort of bump into them and you say, oh, it's so nice to see you. Actually, you've spoken a lie because you genuinely don't mean that. So just through diplomacy, just through carelessness, it's very easy to forget to tell the truth. But Raj Yoga, as we said, is an extremely difficult path. It says you must make sure those 3 things are always aligned in order for you to be successful in meditation. Another sort of discipline is this idea of ahimsa. And ahimsa means non-violence, but it means obviously not committing any sort of physical violence or hurt to anybody, but also what you say, make sure you don't say anything hurtful to anybody. But even more than that, it takes it a step further. It says you can't even think anything negative or bad about anything or anyone. And that's a very, very difficult thing to achieve. So the Raj Yoga system starts off with 10 such disciplines like that. I'm not going into depth into all 10 of them, but I'm just giving you a flavor of what some of those disciplines are. And another one, which is probably the most difficult, and which is probably why the vast majority of humanity would not want to follow the path of Raj Yoga, is this discipline called celibacy. And celibacy obviously means no lovey-dovey. You can't even think about anything like that at all. You have to be totally celibate to be able to stand any chance of success in meditation. So yes, it's a very set of severe disciplines that you need to be able to master before you can actually sit down to meditate. Okay, suppose you have mastered those 10 disciplines. What comes next? The next step is actually the posture that you choose to sit down and meditate. And the posture is called asana. And what asana requires is that your head, your neck, and your backbone must be aligned, must be in a straight line. And you have to find a comfortable position because you're going to have to be able to sit down and meditate for long periods of time. So it's incredibly important that you find a place that is comfortable, but your backbone must be erect. And I don't know if you found, so say for example, you're slouching and you're kind of like drooping a bit, your thoughts sort of become down and they become negative. But when you're upright, your thoughts become more positive and energized. So it's really important to have your head, your neck, and your backbone in a straight line and stay upright. And ultimately, remember, you are the spirit, so why not sit upright? And sort of tying along with this concept of the correct posture for meditation is this idea of the sort of physical exercises and the physical fitness that you need to be able to sit down and meditate for long periods of time. And this is what the vast majority of humanity have latched onto, is this idea of yoga as being purely physical exercises. And they latch onto this idea and they forget about the whole other spiritual dimension to it, because the vast majority of humanity are actually not interested in making that spiritual progress. They just want to have a physically fit and healthy body so that they can go out there and enjoy life more. So for the vast majority of humanity, the whole aim and the whole purpose of yoga is to have that physically fit and healthy body. But it's only the very few, the rarest individuals who say, this is not the conclusion of yoga. Having a physically fit body is not the conclusion of yoga. For me, even if I get to live to be 100 by practicing yoga, it doesn't matter to me, because I'll just be a healthy animal at the end of the day. I want something more and I want to break free. So this path is only for those very few who have that tremendous spiritual stirring within them to say, I don't want to sort of keep living this life where I'm bogged down and tied down by so many rules and regulations. I want to break free. And this is essentially what the process of Raj Yoga is all about. Okay, so we've talked about asana, the sitting position that you choose when you meditate. Actually, what you find is when you do start becoming successful in meditation, you will find that there are certain nerve currents which are flowing through your spine. When you are successful, there are certain physiological changes which happen to your spine. And that's why it's incredibly important to be upright, to have your head, neck, and backbone in a straight line. So let's move on to the fourth step, which is called pranayama. Pranayama literally means gaining control over my life force. What is the thing which is pushing my lungs in and out? What is the thing that is pushing the blood around my body? What is the thing that is driving the nerve currents around my body? Pranayama is saying, let us get control of that. And it sounds like a bit of a daunting task. How do you even start with something like that? We feel the vast majority of the time, we feel we are in control of our bodies. We can talk, we can walk, our body just does what we tell it to do. And we think, oh, we're in control of our bodies. But actually, yoga highlights that we are actually not in control of a great deal that is going on within our body. We can't control our heartbeat. We can't control the nerve currents that are flowing around and the blood flow. We have no control over those things. Those things are in a way sort of running on automatic pilot. And what pranayama is saying is, let us find the engine room to our body and let us sit in the driver's seat rather than letting it run on automatic pilot. And it does sound very daunting. It feels a bit far-fetched. How can you stop and start your heartbeat whenever you want? But actually, pranayama says, if you are successful, this is actually possible. The thing is, when you have this sort of idea, you think, where do I start? And the place that you start is, let's start with a part of our anatomy that we know we all have control over. And the part of our anatomy that we all have control over is our breath. So let us start this huge undertaking with our breath. We can speed up our breath, we can slow it down, we can stop it temporarily. For example, if we go underwater, we can stop and start our breath. So pranayama says, let us start with that process. And there is actually a technique, in case any of you would like to give it a try, if you've got some spare time, which involves closing your right nostril, breathing in through the left, and without any break, then switching your fingers round and then breathing out through your right nostril. And you keep doing this process for about 3 times. You do 3 cycles of that. And that is supposed to sort of purify your nerves. And it helps you to start gaining control over the rhythm of your body and how it's all sort of fitting together. And they say that you should do this sort of exercise. It only takes like a minute or two. You do it every sort of 4 hours throughout the day. That's how you start, by getting control over your breath. And then you're then able to start getting control over more and more subtle aspects of your being, of your body. Then you start gaining control over the nerve currents. Then you start getting control over your thought currents, until eventually you gain control over the actual life force which is driving your body forward. It's something that we all have, and it's something that we don't even know that we can control. Like, our body is just kind of running by itself. But it's incredible that through this process of yoga, you can actually learn to harness it and be in control of your life. But actually, what we find is that, when you talk to people like that, I'm going to learn how to stop and start my heartbeat. I'm going to learn how to control the nerve currents. It makes you think, what, really? Just by doing this really simple breathing exercise, can I control so much of my body? So what Raj Yoga says is that, yes, fair enough, have doubts, but the way to clear your doubts, and the only way to clear your doubts, is by putting it into practice yourself and seeing for yourself if there is any validity to it. You could read all the books on the planet on Raj Yoga, but you won't make any inch of progress until you give it a try for yourself. So Raj Yoga throws a challenge to humanity and says, give it a try. If you're doubtful, try it for yourself and see if it starts making a difference. And you'll be amazed at some of the side effects which happen when you practice this system of breathing and Raj Yoga. So obviously it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of practice, but you will eventually start getting glimmers of something which suggests that there is some depth to this process of Raj Yoga. Some of the things that can start happening to you is that you will suddenly find you'll be able to read other people's minds. You will find that you will be able to hear conversations that are happening far away. And it sounds far-fetched, and you think, oh, that sounds totally ridiculous. But actually what Raj Yoga is showing us is that we are harnessing the powers of our minds. In our current state of consciousness, we are only using the smallest fraction of our mind. But by gaining control over our life force and our body, we start gaining better access to what our mind is actually capable of. So for example, you're watching a magician and they're doing a magic trick and you're totally amazed by it, and you think, wow, this is incredible. How did this person do such a beautiful magic trick? And I have no idea how he did it. It's magic. But suppose the magician then explains the mechanism to you, saying, oh, you just do this and this and this. The magic of it disappears and you're like, oh, I know what it is. It's just a simple this and that. And I understand how it works. And that is what Raj Yoga is saying. It sounds ridiculous and far-fetched to think, oh, how can I read somebody's mind? But give it a try and understand the mechanism, and you will see the power of your own mind. So very, very fascinating. Just to sort of lighten up a bit, it's a little story. Once upon a time, there was a god and a demon, and they went to a rishi, an enlightened individual, to learn about the secrets of the universe. And the rishi spent a long time sort of training and teaching them about the nature of the universe. And eventually he ended his teaching with a riddle. And the riddle was, you yourself are the being that you are searching for. And the god and the demon went away and they thought, what's the answer to this riddle? Perhaps I'm the body. Perhaps that's what he is referring to. So both the god and the demon then went about looking after their bodies incredibly well, eating very well, clothing themselves in the finest clothes. And the demon was satisfied with this. But for some reason, the god was not satisfied, because he realized that his body and all physical bodies are subject to old age, disease, and death. They are constantly changing. And the rishi had told him that the self is unchanging and eternal. So this didn't seem to fit well for the god. And he went back to his teacher and he said, Sir, I thought that I was the body, but how can I be the body? Because it's subject to old age and disease and death. So how can that be the true self? And the rishi smiled and he said, find out for yourself. Tattvamasi, thou art that. And then the god went away and he started thinking again, okay, so if I'm not the body, then perhaps I am my mind, because my mind isn't subject to old age and disease and death. Perhaps I am the mind. But then the more he thought about it, the more that didn't make sense either, because he saw that 1 minute his mind was happy, 1 minute his mind was sad, 1 minute he was depressed, 1 minute he was anxious. So all of these emotions constantly mean that his mind was in a state of flux, and all of our minds are in a state of flux. So how can that be this eternal and unchanging self? And then the God went back to the Rishi and he said, so I thought maybe if I'm not the body, I'm the mind, but my mind is in a constant state of flux. So how can that be my true self? And the Rishi again smiled. He said, find out for yourself, Tattvamasi, thou art that. So again, the God went back and he said, okay, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, then who am I? And he began his journey of introspection and realizing that beyond the sort of vagaries of the body and the mind, which are constantly in a state of flux, he found out who he really was. He found out his true self, which is the spirit. And he eventually became enlightened, while the demons sort of remained thinking that he was the body. So yes, this is the thing, is that, we think of our body as being like a solid thing, a solid lump of matter. But actually, it's constantly changing. And we even learn in biology, for example, that all the cells in our body are constantly dying and being replenished. So even in the space of a year, physically, we are completely different to what we were a year ago. It's in a way very similar to thinking of, this lump of water. We call it a river. And, we just call it this is a mass of water and I call it a river. But then if you actually analyze the river, you see that it's full of constantly changing water molecules. They're coming and going and they're flowing around. It's a constant state of flux. And that is the nature of our body. And it is also the nature of our mind as well, to be in this constant state of flux. And we have to recognize that we are so much more than this constant state of flux. And this is what this process of Raja Yoga and Pranayama is trying to help us to achieve. So coming back to this topic, so we start off with the breath. And as you sort of get more and more control over your breath, you start gaining greater and greater control of the more subtle aspects of your body. In a way, you can imagine it as being like breath as being like a big lever that you're turning of a machine. So you start turning that lever, and the more you keep turning that lever, more and more of the finer cogs and wheels within that machine will start sort of coming to life and working together. And that is essentially what pranayama is trying to say. First, you control the breath. Then after the breath, you control the nerve currents. After the nerve currents, you control the thought currents. And after the thought currents, you gain control over your whole life force. So another story, just to keep it lighthearted. So once upon a time, there was a king and a minister. And the minister was a very clever minister, and he advised the king very well on most issues. However, the minister made a mistake one day, and the king got really cross with him. So what the king did is he locked the minister up in the tallest tower of his palace. And the minister had a very faithful wife, and every night this poor wife would come to the bottom of the tower to see her husband. And the minister said to his wife, I've got a plan as to how I can escape, how I can become free. And the wife said, yes, tell me what it is. What is it? What do you need me to do? And the minister said, okay, tomorrow night, come back with these items. Come back with a beetle, some honey, a silk thread, pack thread, the thread that you use to pack parcels, pack thread, some stout wine, and a long rope. Come back tomorrow night with those items. And the wife was really puzzled. She said, I don't know what he's talking about, but okay, I'll bring all those items. So the next night she came with those items. And the minister said, okay, that's great. So he said, first of all, get the beetle and tie the silk thread to the beetle. And with the honey that you've got, smear some honey on the horns of the beetle. And then set it against the wall of the tower facing upwards and let it go. And then she did this, and the beetle started to crawl up the tower, chasing the scent of the honey, but with this long silk thread dangling from underneath. Eventually, the beetle reached the minister. So then the minister grabbed hold of the top of the silk thread while the wife had the bottom of the silk thread. And then the minister said, okay, great. Now to the bottom of the silk thread, tie the pack thread. So she tied pack thread to the bottom, and the minister was able to pull it up and get the pack thread. Then he said, let's do the same thing again with the stout twine. So again, the wife tied stout twine to the bottom, and the minister was able to get the stout twine. And the final step, so he said, to the bottom of the stout twine, tie the rope. So the wife tied the rope to the bottom of the twine, and the minister was able to pull it up and get a rope, which helped him to get to freedom. He could escape finally. And that is essentially a way of demonstrating what this process of pranayama is all about. It's about sort of gaining control step by step of the more and more subtle aspects of our being, so that we can eventually have control over the life force which is within us. So let's move on from that and go on to the actual process of meditation itself. So what is recommended is, if you are lucky enough to have a spare room in your house, dedicate that room for just contemplation and meditation. Don't do anything in that room apart from meditation and contemplation. So don't eat in that room, don't sleep in that room, don't chat to your friends in that room. Keep that room completely clear. Keep it purely for this purpose. And in that room, obviously, keep it immaculate, keep it spotless and clean, and fill it with things which bring you happiness. So flowers or pleasant pictures, whatever pleases you, whatever uplifts you. And make sure you don't go in that room if you're having an argument or you're feeling sort of angry or stressed. Don't go in that room. Save it for being purely when you want to feel uplifted. So you go into that room when you are sort of, you've had a bath. You go into that room and you sit down to meditate in that room. And every time you meditate, you create very sort of positive vibrations. And the more sort of positive vibrations you can sort of create in that room, in a way like radio waves, like we talked about before, you're kind of releasing these very positive vibrations there. You will find that you are creating, in a way, your own sort of safe space, your own safe haven. And that is actually the logic behind places of worship of all world religions, is that, you can go to a temple or a mosque or a church, and this is a place where people collectively leave all their sort of worldly worries aside and think about higher things. And you will find that if you are very disciplined in this room, this process of keeping this room for this purpose, you will find that, say, for example, you're feeling down or depressed, or for some reason you're not happy, and you step into that room, you will suddenly sort of feel this little boost of energy. So you've created, in a way, your own sort of safe space. And in that safe space, you can then finally sit down and start meditating. And what Raja Yoga says is that the first step you do when you meditate is, well, choose times of day where you're feeling relatively calm. So there could be evening, there could be morning time, because they're times when our bodies and minds are naturally calmer. And they say during those times, go into that room, sit in your straight position, and the first thing you do is send a current of holy thought to the entirety of the universe. From the bottom of your heart, with the most genuine intention, wish for happiness and health for every living thing which is in the entire world. Genuinely, from the bottom of your heart, wish it. And what you will find is that the best way of getting health and happiness for yourself is by first wishing it for others. And that's a beautiful thought, a beautiful way of, in a way, sending a boomerang into the universe, a very positive boomerang, and it will, in a way, somehow come back to you and impact you. So you start off with that. And if you want to pray, you can pray to a god if you choose to. You don't even have to believe in a god in this process of Raja Yoga. But if you want to pray, pray for knowledge and pray for light. You don't pray for cars and nice houses. Remember, this is the path of Raja Yoga. This is the majestic path. So asking for anything less than knowledge and light is beneath you. Remember, this is the majestic path, the most difficult, but the most majestic path. So pray for knowledge and light if you do decide to pray. And during your process of meditation, tell your body that it is strong. It is the best instrument you have for making spiritual progress in this life. So tell your body it is strong. And also tell your mind that it is strong. It can withstand anything. and have unbounded faith and hope, not necessarily in a God in the sky, but in yourself. And this is how we begin our process into Raj Yoga, and hopefully becoming enlightened one day. So let's see. But we'll continue on this journey next week. But there's a lot of practical information there which you could use in your day-to-day life if you want to. Absolutely no pressure, but if you want to give it a try, you're welcome to. So any questions, any thoughts, anything that you think, hang on, that doesn't make any sense? Anything at all you would like to ask? At all? Anything? Everyone's quiet. Okay. But yeah, like I was saying previously, last time I gave you the sort of experiment to do on yourselves to see what happens when you actually sit down to meditate. And, you could see how your mind sort of becomes very sort of in a state of flux, and it goes all over the place, and it does anything but focus on what you want it to. So carry on this process if you want to. Try these breathing exercises. Try and find a safe space which you can create where you can practice meditation and see if it has any impact on your life. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Free e-learning course in Hinduism. To register, please visit www.hindu-academy.com.
Talks on Hinduism. Sponsored by People Care. Encouraging caring for the elderly in their own homes. For more information, please visit peoplecare.com.